I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. David Pecker, former CEO of the National Enquirer, Mr. Catch and Kill himself, was called back to testify before the New York grand jury, being orchestrated by attorney Alvin Bragg here in New York City on the hush money event with the Stormy Daniels event, Michael Cohen and Donald Trump, and a couple of days before the 2016 election. And so Robert Costello testified last week and was blasting Michael Cohen. And so I think the rebuttal witnesses, they brought David Pecker back. And Lawrence O'Donnell, who I think, if I can get something off of Tucker Carlson, off of Hannity, that is straight and not as terribly misleading and insulting as well. And I watch Fox, but sometimes it's just insulting of your intelligence, the stuff that they try to run past you, including my pillow guy. But at any rate, so Lawrence O'Donnell, I think, is a pretty straight shooter, though he's as liberal as the days are long. I think he does a credible, if you will, expose of subject matters, especially subject of the day. And so he did a thing on David Pecker last night, so I'm going to let you listen to it. I'm going to ask the engineer to leave my mic open so in case I want to chime in.
The boss of the National Enquirer, who was supposed to be the mastermind of the catch and kill scheme for Donald Trump, was a man named David Pecker.
I'll hold it right there. I don't want to be insultive or offensive to any of y'all. I don't. That guy needs a new name. Go ahead, Mr. Engineer. I'm sorry if that offended you. But, go ahead.
Is how the New York Daily News greeted the revelation in court in the Michael Cohen case that David Pecker was a witness in the grand jury investigation. There it is. That was the front page of the Daily News when they found out David Pecker was forced to go under oath in the Stormy Daniels investigation by federal prosecutors. Tomorrow's Daily News may have a headline of a similar spirit to convey the news that David Pecker testified today to the Manhattan grand jury that is investigating Donald Trump's involvement in the Stormy Daniels payoff. Because reporters are staking out the Manhattan courthouse, they can usually see who is coming and going at the grand jury room, but they have no idea what the testimony in the grand jury room actually is. David Pecker was reported as having testified to the grand jury in January. In a moment, we'll be joined by a former Manhattan district attorney, assistant district attorney, who will share his invaluable insights as to what could bring a witness like that back to the grand jury. After Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to federal crimes in the payoff he arranged to Stephanie Clifford, the actress known as Stormy Daniels, he testified to a House committee that the National Enquirer had what he called a treasure trove of documents about stories that the National Enquirer killed for Donald Trump.
You also mentioned that the president was very concerned about the whereabouts of these documents and who possessed them. Does that treasure trove of documents still exist?
I don't know. I had asked David Pecker for them.
So you would say the person who knows the whereabouts of these documents would be David Pecker? David Pecker,
Barry Levine, or Dylan Howard.
The other two men worked for David Pecker at the National Enquirer.
Now the event here is that what they're trying to nail down is Robert Costello testified last week that Michael Cohen made that hush money payment on his own. And Tribulation Trump said this past weekend on his plane out to Waco, Texas, that he didn't tell Michael Cohen to pay Stormy Daniels any money, that Michael Cohen did that because he was trying to ingratiate himself to get himself a job down at the White House, and he did it on his own, that Trump had nothing to do with it. While there's a paper trail, however, that Trump did reimburse Michael Cohen and called it a retainer fee rather than campaign contributions, that somehow or another it got twisted into that. I still don't understand all of the interworkings of how they're hiding that money. they actually set up a false bank account down in Delaware to transfer $130,000. Listen, if you want to try to find out where to hide $130,000, give it to me. But anyway, so David Pecker was involved in the process of the story, because what happened is that Stormy Daniels said she was going to go public on Trump and tell Trump, she said, and I heard the story the other night, I think it was on Lawrence O'Donnell, that she met Trump out at Lake Tahoe at some golf tournament. I don't know if they have a golf course at Lake Tahoe. I ain't never seen one out there. Anyway, and that when they had sex or something, then she had sex with him in a Beverly Hills hotel out there in Los Angeles, California. She said, I don't know whether she said when he was in Lake Tahoe hotel, Stormy Daniels testified that when she came into the room, that Tribulation Trump was wearing a pair of black silk pajamas from head to toe, black silk. And this is the absolute truth. Now, I don't want to offend anybody if this is a little bit offensive to you. I'm just doing a job of reporting here. Yeah, I understand I'm a preacher and everything. But if this offends you, I ask you to forgive me. But she said Stormy Daniels said about Trump, and I don't know where it's true. I don't know if I even believe it. But she said, Pastor, if you don't believe, why are you gonna report it? Well, I don't know. She said he had these black silk pajamas. Then she said she took a belt and she patted him on his rear end or something like that. That's what I heard. I think I heard her say. Anyway, so David Pecker found out that Stormy Daniels was getting ready to drop spill the beans on Trump. He said, I'll pay you for your story. And I don't know how much you paid, $130,000, whatever and then he caught what you do is catch and kill, caught the story, but never published that. But because he now owned the right to it, Stormy Daniels couldn't go to any other news outlet and stay it, because otherwise she'd get sued. So it's called catch and kill. And allegedly that David Pecker been doing this for years for Trump. One of Trump's women want to, spill the beans on him. David Pecker would get the story, the National Enquirer. They have in the National Enquirer once. They did. Yeah, I was in the National Enquirer. Not about this kind of stuff, though. Anyway, so and now David Pecker been called back to see, what's up here? Did Trump know it? What did he know, and when did he know it? Okay, Mr. Engineer, go ahead.
Donald Trump spent the weekend lying about the Manhattan District Attorney's grand jury investigation at a campaign rally in Texas that attracted a much smaller crowd than Trump campaign rallies used to attract. Donald Trump said the Manhattan District Attorney was working, quote, under the auspices and direction of the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. He, of course, called it the Injustice Department. And that is a lie. The Manhattan District Attorney operates with complete independence, as does the Justice Department, and they are both completely independent of the other in their current investigations of Donald Trump for a range of crimes that he may have committed. Donald Trump hearkened back this weekend to his life before politics, telling the following lie to the Texas crowd. I was leading this life. I didn't know what subpoena meant. Donald Trump has been hit with subpoenas in civil lawsuits virtually every year of his professional life. He's also issued subpoenas in federal lawsuits, as all litigants are allowed to do, virtually every year of his professional life. Donald Trump has had subpoenas flying back and forth in his life every year of his life. Donald Trump's name had been on more subpoenas than any other president in history before he entered politics. And he has set a record for presidents and former presidents being subpoenaed since he entered politics. Stephanie Clifford has offered very detailed evidence, including dialogue, describing her evening in a hotel room with Donald Trump. She has described what he was wearing and then what he wasn't wearing. Stephanie Clifford has quoted what Donald Trump said about how she reminded him of his daughter. At his rally on Saturday, Donald Trump offered a few words, and I mean very few words, of some sort of denial, apparently referring to what happened in that hotel room. Here is a picture of Donald Trump and Stephanie Clifford, also known as Stormy Daniels.
No black pajamas, though.
He said in Texas this weekend that I never liked her.
Really?
Except he didn't say her. He used a nasty term that he thinks is a clever insult about her looks, which, as that photograph proves, Stephanie Clifford is a far more attractive person than Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump said this, and if you have trouble following this, remember, this is Donald Trump talking when he is trying to lie about his evening with Stormy Daniels, so he struggles with each sentence or attempt at a sentence. This is what he said. He said, it's just not a terrible thing. That wouldn't be the one. There is no one. We have a great first lady who people really do love, and she has done an incredible job. Not anything. They have nothing. That's Donald Trump apparently trying to say, as he has said before, that if he wanted to have an affair, it would not be with Stephanie Clifford. That wouldn't be the one, he said. And then he realized that some of the people in his Texas audience might still be conservative enough to think no one would be the one to have an affair with. And so Donald Trump caught himself and on the next sentence said, there is no one. And that's when he,
well,
when the logic.
My thing is this, I've always wondered about this. How did he first, how did he encounter Stormy Daniels, Stephanie Crawford is her name. How did he, I think that the reports I've heard so far, and I'm not all detailed on this, is that he met her in Lake Tahoe. And maybe anyway, go ahead. Let's go ahead, Miss Cindy. She's the one. She ain't the one. She, I don't know. Go ahead.
Of what he was supposed to say, that's apparently what was in there. That's what he was trying to say. And the logic of that would mean that the next sentence would be, I love my wife. Something like, I love my third wife, and I have always been strictly faithful to my third wife in every sense of that word. But Donald Trump could not bring himself to say any version of, I love my wife. Something politicians usually find pretty easy to say, no matter how true it is or isn't. Instead of saying, I love my wife, Donald Trump said, we have a great first lady who people really do love. And he didn't even bother to count himself among those people. And then he gave his wife what Donald Trump thinks is the greatest possible compliment he could ever give a Trump wife. She has done an incredible job. Imagine you're Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer.
Lawrence is really ripping this boy apart. I think he's right about, you ought to say you love your wife, man. Not somebody else loves her. Especially in this context. Or maybe he doesn't love her, so maybe he didn't want to lie. I don't know, but I tell you, Lawrence O'Donnell is picking them apart. They've been like picking them, meat off a bone in terms of dissecting what went on that Saturday. And by the way, how large was the crowd that Trump had in Waco? Trump has had as many as 90,000 people in an event in North Carolina going back, a few years ago. But at any rate, let's see what else Lawrence has to say. I find the information there interesting. By the way, I don't have a dog in this fight because I understand why people like Trump. I do. My thing is this: is that, well, just in a nutshell, and there's a whole lot more detail I could get into, obviously. But for the Trump supporter, it's either Trump or Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and Black Lives Matter, and LGBTQ. Now, what you gonna do? It's either Trump and his lies or his whatever it is that he does, or his Stormy Daniels, his women, or whatever Trump does is him, or Kamala Harris, Black Lives Matter, and LGBTQ, and Joe Biden. So I understand people say, well, maybe he ain't, St. Thomas or St. Anselm, or, but I'd rather him than Kamala Harris or Joe. So I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm just here, the quintessential reporter, trying to help you, understand your day and what's going on in your world. Go ahead, Mr. Engineer.
Lawyers tonight, looking at the documentary evidence of the $130,000 sent by Michael Cohen to Stormy Daniels' lawyer to pay off Stormy Daniels, and you're looking at the checks Donald Trump wrote to Michael Cohen to cover up that payoff. And you imagine putting your client, Donald Trump, on the witness stand in Manhattan in his own defense, and then you hear him say to an audience of a few thousand Trump fanatics in Texas, that wouldn't be the one. Meaning, I, Donald Trump, an expert on Donald Trump having affairs, insist to you that's not a person Donald Trump would have an affair with. And then, as Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer, you listen, hoping that your client, Donald Trump, can find a way of saying, I love my wife. And he's never been under more public pressure in his life to say, I love my wife, and he cannot bring himself to say it. Those words do not cross his mind. If you're Donald Trump's lawyers, and he is indicted in the Stormy Daniels case in Manhattan, you know that your only chance of getting a not guilty is to put Donald Trump on the witness stand to try to convince that jury that the only reason he participated in the Stormy Daniels payoff scheme was not to hide Stormy Daniels' story from American voters a couple of weeks before they voted for president in 2016. It was only to spare the feelings of his third wife.
All right, okay. I
think
I've had enough of this. I think I've had enough. This guy's, all right, so you made your point. And I'm not sure the grand jury, Alvin Bragg's grand jury is not meeting today. I understand they're scheduled to meet on Wednesday. If they're going to indict the man and get it over with. A lot of people saying, well, Trump has actually tweeted on his social media, Truth Social, that the case is falling apart. I don't know if I believe that. There's probably some stumbling blocks. I think it's a difficult case, quite frankly. Not impossible, and certainly not impossible to get a grand jury to indict. You probably have heard it said you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. But if they're going to indict him, they ought to indict him and get it over. But a lot of people are saying that they're now trying to get ramped up for security here in New York City, because if Trump is indicted, then Alvin Bragg has received what looked like ricin and a white envelope, a white powder rather, and death threats have been leveled at him. And so they're trying to get New York City ready for, if there is an indictment, that, there's not an attempt to try to whack Alvin Bragg and maybe some other people as well. So that's where we are at this present moment. I don't know which way it's going to go. I really don't. I guess I haven't given very much thought because I got my own. I have to tell y'all of these days I got my own case going now in terms of subpoenaing 9 lawyers representing banks in the city of New York and a bunch of other people that I'm going to deal with very shortly. But I'm going to be the best to be the quintessential James David Manning when I report.